Get boosted! Get boosted! This is your Prime Minister, get boosted!
The experts into the group where there's 10 drops.
Freedom!
That's right. I think it would go to, say you've got years of prayer and drugs, say my local hospital, Southern Hospital 1, we would like to have a very friendly open debate to inform you about things. They're not going to accept it. So then you get that on record. Yes. And then we just look at evidence. So then we can show them, look, what we want is we don't have to tell them this is what we believe. We say all we want is a conversation about it. Why won't they have a conversation? Yes, and that's their focus point. Because then we're not bound by the line. And I think that's what we're going to go to the middle ground and say, just want a conversation. And then if they still refuse to engage, you can see a lot of control. Yes. No, this is very true. There's one person, like I said, freedom! That's what often happens. It's basically the fight. Basically, they disengage. A lot of the time I go to the disengage, but in fact, I end up on the outfit. documentary credibility.
Indeed, it's like, you know, it comes back to the hotel knowledge again, you know. While a couple of signs
Start screaming. Most people can't get
it's like a negative
Yeah, you want to reach me.
Let's do that. Okay, folks, so we've been walking now through the streets of London. It's materialised. I did about an hour of footage where I captured some amazing interviews with a number of the different campaign group leaders that it seems to be lost in the ether, but I hope to be able to restore it later on. But as we are here, you can see we're walking through London. I'm with David from Reaching People. We're going to talk about the weapons of mass communication and how you can reach people, how you can communicate about these different issues that we're experiencing right now. David, great to see you here. Let's
Likewise, Dan.
tell me about the weapons of mass communication.
Okay, so if we take a look at how many of the institutions communicate their message, how advertisers, the government, etc., you'll see some common themes. And it won't be generally based on fact. It will be based on how we as people absorb information very easily. So, you know, how do we digest things? So you want to give people things they can digest. So the weapons of mass communication are really three things: stories, metaphors, and questions. And information gets passed on very effectively through stories and metaphors. And of course, questions allow you to highlight something in someone's awareness.
Yes.
And you'll see that when we package information this way, when we share it this way, you can actually really get through to people.
Yes.
So that's really one of the really effective ways. And of course, prior to this, you really want to have a situation where you can have open debate. You want to create the conditions to have an open and honest conversation.
Yeah.
You can't have that if we call each other names. So in fact, divide and conquer is so effective, isn't it?
Yes,
so
it is, yeah.
Stories can really transcend that. And of course, Plato was the one that said, "He who tells the stories rule society."
Right.
For a very good reason.
Yes.
So in fact, should we share one of the...
Well, yeah, but before we do that, I just want to make clear that I haven't just met this random stranger off the side of the street who just happens to know all this stuff. David runs Reaching People. Tell us a little bit about Reaching People, and let's see if
Okay,
it's a
so
good example.
ReachingPeople.net was really created for those of us that want to challenge a narrative or anything, okay? And of course, I think it was Max Planck that said, science moves on one funeral at a time. We historically don't like having our ideas challenged. So since that's so problematic, we wanted to create a place where people could go and learn the ways to reach people. And it's not about getting someone to believe what we believe. That's not what it's about. It's about having a place where the truth will arise.
Yes.
Creating the conditions, setting the table that we can have a good conversation.
Yes.
And if we're on opposite sides of the table in terms of opposition, that's problematic.
Yep.
So we come up with a metaphor which really, if you imagine those of you watching now, of all the information that you've learned over the last year and previously, and you've built it into floors of knowledge.
Yes.
So the very easy stuff's at the basement, and then you just work your way up. When you're at the penthouse, some of the conclusions that you know are going to be far too complex for people to not only understand, but to believe are true.
Yes.
So you really have to start when we talk about common ground. And I know, Dan, you said that if we're shouting from the penthouse and the people haven't walked in the lobby, to lose your temper. It's at that point that Rachel remembered, don't step in the ring, and she managed to keep the anger down.
Yes.
She turned around, put her hand on her heart, and said, "How can I help you?" The elderly lady was taken back and said, "Oh, I don't want to get emotional."
Yeah, that's fine.
Then Rachel said, "It's fine, you can get emotional."
Yes.
And then the elderly lady looked up and just said, "I just need a hug."
Wow.
And that was so powerful. And that's so powerful when I tell people that story, because we realise those that are following all the complying with the rules, a lot of the time it's because of fear and other
Afraid,
things.
yeah.
And the reason she was angry at Rachel is that she had pictured Rachel as being the reason that she doesn't get a hug from her granddaughter.
Indeed.
That makes sense. So this is the essence of divide and conquer.
Well, yes, because she thinks we're the problem and we think they're the problem.
Exactly. You attach the emotions coming up to the people that you want to isolate.
Right.
Makes sense. So the people pushing the narrative with everything. You think about Brexit. Country cut down the middle. Each side's blaming the other side.
Yes.
When really the true question is who's going to push the politics, and both of those really we could argue are not the best in our best interest.
Right.
So that's the essence of divide and conquer. And of course we have to find a way. And when two people are having a conversation, a lot of the time both people think they're correct. The question is, how does one of us transcend that problem? That makes sense? So if we can say, I'm not going to be addicted to being correct, I'm going to find a way to create an open and honest conversation with the other person, when the truth will arise, and if I've done my correct research, I should have truth more on my side.
Yes.
Then there's going to be a lot less agitation.
Indeed.
And we can actually then have nice conversations. And we've had so many of them now. The number one thing I'd say, do not step in the ring.
Right.
When people come back at me with abuse, if I'm friendly to them, a lot of the time they apologise for being rude.
Yes.
We are rational people when we're in the rational part of the mind.
Yes.
That makes sense?
Indeed.
And that's why fear is so used, Dan, because you get people scared and then everything goes black and white.
Absolutely. Now, so there was a very good story, and that's become a memorable story for me now. I think about that every time I'm in a situation like that. So it absolutely works. So this hotel of knowledge, getting people into the lobby. You're absolutely right. If you've been studying the situation like you and I have for goodness knows how long it's been now, you accumulate, you stack knowledge upon knowledge upon knowledge. You start to understand the assumptions that underpin all of this. So you forget where it all began and where what led you on the path of curiosity and questioning, and those initial foundational understandings that enable you to understand the situation at a deeper level. So with that in mind, how do we actually then to think about get people in the hotel of knowledge? How do we welcome them into the lobby, so to speak?
Well, that's a very good question. That's one that we spend a lot of time pondering.
Yes.
So I think the first thing is to say, well, let's imagine for a moment we were on opposite sides of our belief systems in the narrative.
Yep.
The question would be, first of all, what can we agree on?
Right. Okay. Interesting.
Can we agree that we both have the interests of people's health as a good thing?
Yes.
Yeah? And I think we're going to find that everywhere. So, one of the conversations I had, which actually probably is a good example, we was at somewhere and it turned out that a 16-year-old girl had been vaccinated. And one of the ladies around had said, they shouldn't, there's no risk reward at that age. The father then arrived and started saying, you lot are spreading misinformation. And I said, and his name, he had the same name, so I said, okay, look. First thing I did was say, look, Dave, I'll be respectful and polite to you, and I know you'll do the same to me.
Yes.
So I basically set the conditions to have a nice conversation. So I said to him, but before we begin, let me tell you, we're on the same side.
Yes.
And he was sort of taken aback, and he said, what do you mean? I said, well, you're here because you care for your family and your community. That's why I'm here.
Yes.
So in fact, we are on the same side.
Yes.
We may have different ideas.
Yep.
And that shifted the whole conversation. But now, because what happens is, people have a caricature in their head.
Yes, they do.
Of who you are, which often comes from people's beliefs. So if you're standing there wearing a t-shirt that says hopes, and the person, believes quite the opposite, already they've orientated themselves to be on the opposite side, and from that, no conversation can ever go well.
No, you're absolutely right, yeah.
So in fact, it's really finding the common ground. Once people connect, and in fact, people, and it's funny because they know consciously at some level that you're not wishing people to be harmed.
Yes.
But you get caught into these weird frames of reference.
Yes.
And you just reminding people of that, they kind of get taken aback, and then they're just a lot more polite.
Yes.
So it's really, the essence of it is you want to set the table correctly.
Yeah.
If you don't set the table correctly, it doesn't matter from there.
Yeah.
And that's why I'd say 99% of conversations just go down the drain, because we stand there shouting belief systems at each other. Yes. Okay, and of course my thing is, first of all, we've got to honour the other person.
Yep.
Okay, and anyone will realise this. It is, with the psychological techniques that are available to the institutes now, you can really get most people to believe anything.
Yeah.
Okay, with enough repetition and people saying that
intensity, repetition, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the wealth of experience they have, a lot of people are believing something that's not true potentially, and they believe it to be true.
Yes.
Now, if you deny someone, think about when they do it to us. They say we're challenging the narrative, and they say everything you believe is nonsense. That feels terrible.
Yes.
So we're in essence doing the same thing.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So really, you can't change someone by pushing against them. We've got to honour their experience. You don't have to agree with it to honour it.
Right. Absolutely.
Yes. You don't have to buy into the fear to acknowledge that they're scared.
Yes. Well, I mean that's empathy. It's seeking first to understand.
Exactly.
And by acknowledging someone else's position, it's not an acceptance of it. And I think a lot that takes the reduction of the ego to be able to say, I acknowledge you, I hear you, I understand. You can understand. You're trying to see it from their shoes, which is very hard because if you've got a solid position yourself that's built on a different belief system, it is actually very difficult to empathise. But at least by seeking to understand, you can understand the kind of ground that they're stood on. And
studied perception for like 20 years, and I can see how people can see anything.
Yes.
I have such an understanding of perception. It doesn't if I see someone in a mask now, it used to anger me before, but I've done so much work on that where you can see from their perspective they think it's helping them, and they think all the believing all the things. Of course, if people think something's a good thing, they're going to do it.
Yes.
If we just tell them no, we're in fact dividing between us. And I know a lot of people struggle with this one. We will do because it's so emotive.
Yeah.
But here's the basics of it. We have people pushing the narrative, okay? We have people defending the narrative, and we have people challenging the narrative.
Yes.
The people defending the narrative and challenging the narrative are on the same side.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
The people pushing the narrative who are making the trillions and the billions and set policy, they're not in this fight.
No.
And one side has to basically say, hang on a minute, I don't want to fight my brothers, sisters, cousins, friends.
Yes. Yes.
If they've been told something that isn't true and they believe it to be true, if we can show them it's not true, and show is the key. You can't tell.
Right.
There's a very good thing in filmmaking, which is, show, don't tell.
Right.
And I'll tell you why this triggers cognitive dissonance quicker than anything else.
Yes.
So let's say that bus is red.
Yeah.
Right? If I told you that bus is blue, what would you say?
I'd say you're mad, David. It's red.
Any amount of me telling you that's blue, would that work?
No.
Exactly. But if I was able to show you that colour was actually blue,
right.
Okay, you know what I mean? And obviously it's red, so I'm the one incorrect in this sense. But let's say it was reversed. Because we tell a story that says 2 + 2 = 5.
Yeah.
Okay? And if you've been told that 2 + 2 = 5, if someone comes along and says 2 + 2 = 4, giving someone a conclusion is like telling someone the punchline of a joke and expecting them to laugh.
Yes.
I mean, it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I think we've got enough experience now to know all that, so much that doesn't work. And it's a complex thing.
Yes.
And in other situations, and this is why echo chambers develop, because everyone's in the echo chamber telling each other the same thing, agreeing.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Well, but that also becomes problematic, and I've seen it myself. Then you actually do create a situation where you create a divide because you've separated people, but you also you do then if there is false information that circulates, it actually starts to permeate as true even if it isn't.
Absolutely. Because that's the thing. I think the awareness is that we're all human.
Yeah.
Okay, and that awareness in itself realises that humans are vulnerable to certain things. We are. We've learned to evolve to take lots of shortcuts in our thinking.
Yes.
Okay, and it's not
People.net, right?
Yes, and we, everything's on there. We've got a course on there.
Yeah, that's so powerful. So the 2 people out of the 100 that found the squirrels were the ones that had their photos deleted. Absolutely, that is exactly what's happening now. The censorship deplatforming. Now I can see we've had variable signal for this entire time, and there's been some gold here. So the good news is, if we did cut out at any point during that, I hope we didn't, but David's going to be coming on the show to talk more about this in the near future. And we mentioned on Friday night that we're going to be launching a community for our audience very soon. I'll be working on the platform behind the scenes for some time now. And we're going to be offering types of training like this and bringing experts in like David and others to talk about these important issues of communication. Because ultimately what this all is about is influence. And communication is the tool of influence, because those who make the decisions are human beings like you and I. And it's how they communicate to themselves and amongst themselves that leads to the results that we find right now. So, when we're campaigning, we're often trying to persuade, as David was saying, but actually we want to bring people, we want to create the conditions for discussion. And once we can create those discussions, and through those conditions, then we can start to change things. So, David, it's been great having you on the march here. Glad to have you here. So we're here in London right now. We're very close to Westminster now. If you've been watching now for some time, we've done a full lap of London. There's several 100,000 people here today. There's so many people here, it's actually hard to keep everyone in one group. You can see that now. But we're making our way back to Parliament Square, where I'm sure, again, you'll see a sense of just how many people are here today. I'm really hoping that the footage has come through. I'm using a new piece of software today, and supposedly it's meant to make the content sharper and the footage clearer, but the test will be when I actually get to see the footage myself. But thank you for tuning in. If you've been watching this, hit the share button to show people at home what's been happening here in London. This march today comes after obviously the votes in the House of Parliament early this week on Tuesday, where the COVID certification or vaccine passports were approved, the NHS mandates were approved, and today it's understood that the Emergency Cobra Committee are meeting to talk about potential lockdowns in the UK. So, we've just gone through this process where Boris has repeatedly said this is an irreversible path, where, people, if they get vaccinated, will have their freedoms back, and then all of a sudden that's no longer true. Now it's if you're triple jab, you'll get your freedoms back, but that's no longer true. We have to ask when this ends, and many people are asking, when will this end? And a lot of people here are saying it ends when we say it does, because we've got to send a clear message that this way of living is causing more harm than good. It's causing a great deal of collateral damage to the healthcare system, the education system, the economy, to the social fabric, the right to family life. There's a real possibility that Christmas will be curtailed in some way today or by Monday by ministers. And this is all predicated on the idea that we are sick until proven healthy, which is really a quite crazy place to be. And I can't see the comments here today on this broadcast, but in previous broadcasts at protests, I see all kinds of criticism about people gathering in numbers. Well, again, if we talk about the science of the virus, we know that the outdoor transmission is incredibly unlikely. Even in a crowd like this is why we've been able to have the football matches and the sport and not see catastrophic super spreader events. So it's important to recognise that people gathered here today are doing so to stand up against this. There's another protest here. I'm not sure. Ethiopian Prime Minister. I'm not sure what this. London is the capital of protest. Whenever you come here, no matter what day of the week, there's a protest. Which says it all. We live in a world. Well, thankfully, if you've been watching the footage recently, I attended the protest last week, which was the police bill protest, which looked at the right to protest, which is under threat. We're just walking past Downing Street now, where the right to protest is under threat, and that's still not clear. But London is a vibrant place, full of multi-cultures, and it's a multicultural city, and there's all kinds of causes that people represent here, and there's always something going on. I always see at least 3 or 4 protests whenever I come to a protest in London. So it's really important we protect that right. And today, en masse, we've been standing up against these COVID-related restrictions and mandates, standing up for medical freedom, and really standing up for humanity, wanting to put compassion back into the way we live. To actually start to move forward and to repair the damage that's been caused by not only the virus but actually the response to the virus, to start to solidify back in our communities again, spend more time with our families and all the things that make us human, and start to bring the joy de vivre back to our way of living, because so many of these policies have separated people from each other, and we have to ask ourselves, there's been people that have been shielding for 18 months, some of them without any medical conditions, but many of these policies have kept us separated, and you have to ask yourself, how many of those days were you unwell? How many of those days were you sick? And I think how many days that we've not been able to spend time with friends and family when neither party is unwell. Just makes sense. I mean, no matter how many times I think about that, it's just insane. I just get, my brain just frazzles. It's like, you know, I'm unwell, I'm well, you're well, why can't we meet? You know, and the choice to me should be the individual, right? You make your own assessment, you make your own discernment.
Hey guys, it's Nicole.
But no, that right to choose has been suppressed, and once again we see potentially the Christmas being curtailed. The right to family life, the right to movement, etc., is once again under threat. So this march couldn't have been any better, the perfect timing, just before Christmas, sending a clear message to the politicians. So I think we're coming right to the end of the march now, heading towards Parliament Square. The march is so big that the front and the back are in different places. But there's been hundreds of thousands of people here today, and wonderful, peaceful atmosphere throughout the entire day, as always with these events. So thank you for watching at home. Please do share this broadcast. I'm likely to do a few more pieces of footage before I head off, before this wraps up. I just want to catch up with some people that we've been able to see along the way. And thank you very much for tuning in. And again, please do share this. We'll be back shortly once we convene in Parliament Square. All right, thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. Add your name to our email list. Just takes you 1 minute of your time. Just go to danjgregory.com/pandemic. That's danjgregory.com/pandemic. You can join our mailing list, and very soon we'll be launching our own private community platform where you can enjoy conversations about how we can resist the situation we're facing, but also how we can reimagine a better world and start creating the future that is more empowering for humanity. So thanks so much for tuning in and sharing. I'll see you again very soon.